gods did not want to work. The burden was heavy. The labor was unbearable. So humanity was created to serve. Enuma Elish, Babylon. What if the gods of the ancient ages were not just mythological stories? Perhaps it is time to look at human history from a different perspective. References to the Anunnaki come from cuneiform tablets that describe Sumerian myths. They are described as divine beings who shaped the world and held authority over the earth. The Epic of Atrahasis, an ancient Babylonian narrative, speaks of higher gods who influence fate. According to this account, the beings known as the Agigi, gods of a lower rank, were responsible for physical labor. The Anunnaki are mentioned not only in the Epic of Atrahasis, but also in the Babylonian creation poem, Enuma Elish. Similarly, these gods are also found in the Epic of Gilgamesh, the oldest known epic in human history. The Anunnaki reappear throughout Sumerian myths and ancient tablets. But do these texts describe the Anunnaki as beings who came from other worlds? Could there have been a connection between the gods of Mesopotamia and the deities and mysterious beings of other ancient civilizations? Are there any concrete archaeological findings that truly suggest extraterrestrial beings may have come to Earth? Or, as the traditional view suggests, were all of these nothing more than symbolic narratives, mythological figures, or reflections of supernatural beliefs? The interpretations we are about to examine move beyond conventional historical narratives. Asterisk, these are not universally agreed facts. They are questioned, debated, and shaped by different perspectives. Our purpose is not to tell you what you should believe. On the contrary, we invite you to consider new possibilities. Whether to accept or to reject is entirely your decision. Because a true journey of the mind does not begin with ready-made answers, but with questions. In Nietzsche's thought, ideas exist not to be protected, but to be tested. Only those that endure this trial gain meaning. A mysterious planet in the Sumerian tablets. The concept of the Anunnaki originates in Sumerian mythology. The Sumerians emerged around 4,500 years ago in Mesopotamia, within the territory of present-day Iraq, as one of the world's earliest civilizations. The term Anunnaki is derived from the Sumerian word Anunna and is generally interpreted as the descendants of the sky god. In the Sumerian belief system, it is regarded as the ruler of the heavens and the supreme figure of the divine pantheon, while the concept of Ki represents the earth. This dual structure symbolizes the connection between the divine and the earthly. In the modern era, this concept has been approached differently, particularly through the alternative interpretations of Zecharia Sitchin applied to the Sumerian tablets. According to Zecharia Sitchin, the Anunnaki were said to inhabit a distant celestial body known as Nibiru, far from Earth. It is claimed that this planet entered a period of severe environmental deterioration, with its atmosphere rapidly suffering damage. According to this narrative, the Anunnaki, in order to save their own world, came to need a substance capable of repairing their atmosphere and sought the solution on Earth. According to these accounts, the Anunnaki came to realize that, when gold is dispersed into the atmosphere in microscopic particles, it can reflect and scatter the rays coming from the sun. This effect could form a protective veil around the planet, preventing the atmosphere from suffering further damage. Driven by the hope of saving their own world, they began to search for other celestial bodies where this rare element could be found. At the end of this search, their course was set toward Earth. According to the accounts, they arrived aboard advanced spacecraft capable of crossing interstellar distances. It is further claimed that these craft used an anti-gravity-based propulsion system, enabling them to traverse the extremely vast distances between Nibiru and Earth. The region where first contact is said to have occurred was Mesopotamia, the very land where, in the millennia to come, the foundations of human civilization would be laid. According to some sources, the arrival of the Anunnaki on Earth is dated to approximately 450,000 years ago. During this period, the planet was an environment inhabited by early human species, such as Homo habilis and Homo erectus. According to the Atrahasis narrative, the first beings to work in the mines were the Igigi, secondary deities subordinate to the Anunnaki. The burden was heavy, the labor was cruel, and the work had become unbearable. The harsh conditions and the endless labor slowly pushed the Igigi to the point of exhaustion. And in the end, they rose against it. They refused to work. They dismantled the tools they were forced to use. They surrounded the domain of Enlil, one of the leading figures of the Anunnaki, and demanded an end to this order. In response to this crisis, the Anunnaki proposed the creation of a new type of being, one designed to bear the physical burden. According to the accounts, this new being, humankind, was formed by molding earth with the essence of a sacrifice god. Thus, it was believed that humanity was endowed with both a material and a divine nature. Humanity's fundamental role was clear: to work. In this way, the Igigi and the Anunnaki would be freed from labor. According to the Atrahasis epic, the story of humanity's creation is explained through this very chain of events. The shaping of humanity's genetic origins. According to the modern interpretation proposed by Zecharia Sitchin, the Anunnaki did not shape humans directly from clay, as described in the myths. Instead, they transformed an existing life form. Using advanced technology, a primitive hominid species already existed on Earth. It was chosen, most likely, Homo erectus. The Anunnaki intervened in its genetic structure, and through this intervention, an entirely new species emerged, Homo sapiens. According to Sitchin, this intervention is the key to understanding humanity's extraordinary mental capacity, its advanced social structures, and its ability to learn. As a result of this genetic experiment, the first human created was named Adamu. With his enhanced biology and increased intelligence, Adamu became the first being capable of carrying out the tasks the Anunnaki required. And the name Adamu bears a striking resemblance to the Hebrew word Adamah, meaning earth and clay. This parallel becomes even more pronounced when compared to the story of Adam described in the book of Genesis. According to the text, God forms Adam from the dust of the ground and breathes into him the breath of life. And thus, Adam becomes a living being. However, in the sacred texts, Adam is not created to labor, but to be the first inhabitant of the Garden of Eden. The tree of knowledge here is a symbol of forbidden wisdom. When Adam and Eve eat the fruit of this tree, they gain the knowledge to discern good from evil. The consequence of this is exile from paradise. Thus, their access to the tree of life is denied, and the path to immortality is closed. Sitchin interprets this narrative from a different perspective. According to him, Eden was not a mystical garden, but an advanced operational center established by the Anunnaki in the region of Mesopotamia. Referred to as Eden in Sumerian, this area may have been a kind of laboratory zone where the first humans were genetically modified. One of the Anunnaki leaders, Enki, advocated the transmission of knowledge to humans, while his brother, Enlil, opposed it. Believing that excessive awareness would be dangerous for humanity, this disagreement between the two figures stands out as one of the fundamental conflicts that determined the course of human history. After the first humans were created, they were allowed to multiply, and over time they formed a vast labor force. Thus, the mining operations and heavy physical labor previously carried out by the lesser gods were transferred to humans. The power and authority structure among the Anunnaki. The Anunnaki possessed an extremely rigid and hierarchical social order. Governance was exercised by a king holding absolute authority, surrounded by a ruling noble class. According to Sitchin, at the very top of this system stood Anu. He was the ultimate authority, the final arbiter of both political and scientific decisions. Power struggles among Anu's offspring, especially the rivalry between Enki and Enlil, profoundly shaped not only Anunnaki society, but the fate of humanity itself. According to Sitchin, the Anunnaki were not limited to resource mining alone. They shared their knowledge with humans in many fields: astronomy, mathematics, architecture, and agriculture. Because of their advanced technology and extraordinarily long lifespans, humans came to perceive them not as ordinary beings, but as gods. The appearance of the Anunnaki. Compared to humans, the Anunnaki are described as truly colossal beings. Their height is estimated to range between 3 to 5 meters, 10 to 16 feet. This imposing physical stature may have played a crucial role in why they were perceived not merely as rulers, but as gods. They are described as having elongated, massive skulls. In many depictions, their eyes are sharp, piercing, carrying an expression of profound wisdom. In some accounts, they are said to possess skin in shades of gold or bronze, often linked to their divine or otherworldly origins. They are often depicted wearing ornate garments, crafted from materials unfamiliar to the people of their time. These garments sometimes resemble armor, sometimes flowing robes, and are portrayed as if they possess technological properties, such as the ability to manipulate energy. Although their appearance is humanoid, certain traits hint at an otherworldly nature. The wings seen in Mesopotamian reliefs surround them with a divine aura, suggesting the ability to move between dimensions, or even between worlds. According to some speculations, the Anunnaki are believed to have used advanced technologies capable of mimicking abilities such as levitation, telepathy, and even the manipulation of time. The departure of the Anunnaki. For thousands of years, the Anunnaki worked alongside humanity, planting the seeds of knowledge and civilization itself. But as with every cycle, their time on Earth was drawing to an end. Conditions on Nibiru began to stabilize, and the urgent need for gold mining slowly diminished. Internal conflicts and challenges to the authority of the Anunnaki leaders created an atmosphere of unrest. These tensions intensified further through the rivalry between Enki and Enlil, until they finally reached a breaking point. Once hovering above the Earth, the ships began to depart, slowly, deliberately. It was the beginning of a gradual withdrawal. The great gods, who once walked among humans and were worshipped as divine, began to withdraw. Anunnaki technology became increasingly rare, while their teachings slowly transformed into the myths and legends we know today. The transfer of authority. According to Sitchin's hypothesis, when the Anunnaki departed from Earth, they did not completely relinquish their influence over humanity. Rather than ruling directly, they appointed human kings as representatives of the divine authority. Sumerian tablets, interpreted through the Anunnaki perspective, describe how power was first transferred to human rulers. They were chosen to rule in the name of the gods. Their duty was clear: to follow the will of the Anunnaki, to maintain order, and to ensure that divine laws were enforced on Earth. In some accounts, kings are said to have been born from unions between gods and humans, and to be direct descendants of the Anunnaki. The concept of divine blood persisted throughout ancient civilizations. Kings were often regarded as demigods. Dynastic records and the rebirth of humanity. After the Great Flood, the Sumerian king list was written in cuneiform on clay tablets, and has been found at various archaeological sites across ancient Mesopotamia. This list describes the successive order of Sumerian kings, spanning a timeline from so-called mythological ages to historical periods. The list states that some kings ruled for thousands of years before a catastrophic event. Ululim is described as the first human king to rule after the time when kingship descended from the heavens. According to the hypothesis that the Anunnaki were extraterrestrial beings, this moment represents the transfer of authority to humanity. According to the Sumerian king list, Ululim ruled Sumer for 28,800 years. His successor, Alaugar, ruled the same city for 26,000 years. And in Menluana governed the city of Bad Tibera for 43,200 years. Some researchers suggest that these rulers were Anunnaki, or human extraterrestrial hybrids. And this, they argue, could explain their extraordinarily long lifespans. If the Anunnaki came from a planet with a different cycle of time, it is possible that their lifespans were far longer than those of humans. According to Sitchin, in his interpretation of the Sumerian texts, the Anunnaki grew weary of humanity as human population increased rapidly and disobedience spread. As a solution, he argues, they decided to wipe out humanity by unleashing a great flood. But the god Enki opposed this decision. He chose to save a human. To ensure his survival, Enki instructed him to build a vessel, a ship that could withstand the coming flood. The story of Ziusudra did not disappear. It lived on, and later inspired the Epic of Gilgamesh. In the epic, Utnapishtim tells Gilgamesh how he survived the Great Flood. Following divine instructions, he built a vessel, bringing aboard his family, and every kind of animal. When the flood began, the waters covered the earth for 7 days and 7 nights, destroying everything in their path. The waters rose so high that even the gods were seized by fear. Terrified by the magnitude of the storm they themselves had unleashed, they fled into the heavens. As the waters began to recede, Utnapishtim first released a dove, and then a swallow, but both returned. He then sent out a raven. The bird did not return, a sign that land had been found. The account of the flood in the Bible is found in the book of Genesis, chapters 6 through 9. Unlike Utnapishtim, the flood experienced by Noah lasts far longer. The rains fall for 40 days and 40 nights, without pause. Noah first releases a raven. It does not return. Then he sends out a dove. The dove comes back, carrying an olive branch in its beak, a silent message that the waters have begun to recede, and the land is breathing once more. According to Sitchin, after the flood, the earth was left in ruins. This devastation forces the Anunnaki to reconsider their actions. They choose not to wipe out humanity entirely. Instead, they decide to teach the survivors how to rebuild civilization. The Anunnaki also decide to limit the lifespan of humanity. By altering human DNA once more, they shortened the human lifespan and prevented uncontrolled population growth. At the same time, some of the advanced physical and cognitive abilities originally granted to humanity were lost. In this way, post-flood humanity would become easier to control and far less likely to challenge authority. The flood created a clear division between the extraordinarily long reigns of the early kings and the much shorter reigns that followed. Among the rulers said to reign after the flood, we find in Mebaragesi, the king of Kish, whose reign is described as lasting 900 years. Alongside him stands Gilgamesh, the legendary king of Uruk, recorded as ruling for 126 years. Similarly, in the Bible, the pre-flood patriarchs, such as Methuselah and Noah, are described as living for many centuries. After the flood, the lifespans of later generations are shown to decrease dramatically. According to the extraterrestrial Anunnaki hypothesis, the flood narratives of Mesopotamia are interpreted as reflecting an alleged intention by Anunnaki leaders to eradicate humanity. However, archaeologists and scientists propose more conventional explanations, arguing that flood stories are rooted in large-scale flooding events or sudden climatic changes. Gilgamesh, a continuation of a divine lineage. Uruk's king, Gilgamesh, is portrayed as an extraordinary being, half god, half human. Towering in stature, endowed with superhuman strength, far beyond that of ordinary men. In the epic, his mother is the goddess Ninsun, a divine figure associated with fertility in dreams, the one who understands visions and reads the language of fate. According to Anunnaki theories, this divine lineage suggests that his mother was an Anunnaki being, while his father was human. A union between the divine and the mortal. In ancient reliefs, Gilgamesh is depicted as exceptionally tall, a detail often linked to his Anunnaki origin. One of the central motivations in the Epic of Gilgamesh is his relentless quest for immortality, a journey driven by loss, by fear of death, and by the desire to transcend human limits. Despite being a powerful king endowed with divine traits, his partial humanity ultimately renders him mortal. A ruler of gods and men, yet bound by the fate of humankind. During his journey, he encounters Utnapishtim, the man who survived the Great Flood in the Babylonian tradition. Utnapishtim tells him that immortality is not a gift granted to all. But he reveals something else. The existence of a plant, hidden at the bottom of the sea, capable of restoring youth. Gilgamesh obtains the plant, but a serpent steals it away. In that moment, he comes to understand that true immortality lies not in eternal life, but in the legacy one leaves behind. But this story does not end here. There are chapters that have never been told. Questions still waiting for answers. and truths hidden deep within the layers of time. To make sure you don't miss what comes next, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications.